Good morning, Clark.
Good morning, Professor.
It's nice to have time to talk with you today. Today is Tuesday, April 25th. Let me begin with a brief introduction about you and about the project.
Yeah, sure.
Clark has chosen to use a pseudonym for this interview and to keep his camera off. Clark was born in 1987 and is originally from a small village in Shandong province, which is located in the east of China. He speaks Mandarin Chinese and English. He is a first-generation college student, and the first time he left his hometown was when he went to college in Tianjin City. Clark majored in engineering in college and worked for an international company in the capital city of Beijing. Then he moved to Beijing and worked in the central business district, realizing his childhood dream. He moved to the United States in 2022, 1 year ago, and now lives with his wife in Rockville, Maryland. Clark attended Montgomery College for 1 semester in the fall of 2022 and was my student, which I was very happy about. He was in ELAP, English Language for Academic Purposes, the ELAP program in the capstone course. Clark is now pursuing a master's degree in the United States. He is also working in the field of international business. And in his spare time, he enjoys playing board games. So thank you so much, Clark, for taking the time to tell me your story. As you know, my name is Heather Bruce Satram, and I teach in ELAP, English Language for Academic Purposes, at Montgomery College. This project is called History in the Making, documenting stories of immigrant and refugee students at Montgomery College. And the goal is to help others better understand the experiences of immigrants in the United States. Telling your story will enable others to better understand the challenges that immigrants face in the United States and better appreciate the resilience and perseverance of people in your community. I am grateful for your participation. You had a chance to read these questions in advance, but please note that all of the questions are optional. If you want to skip a question, just let me know, that's fine. If you need to take a break at any point, that's also fine. And we'll talk for about an hour today. All right, to begin, can you please tell me the pseudonym that you are using for this interview?
Clark.
Great. And do I have permission to record this interview?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. All right, so tell me, Clark, where and when were you born? How old are you? And tell me a little bit about the place where you were born.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Clark. I'm so happy to be here to share my story with you today. I was born in China, as Professor Setram introduced. I was born in a small village in China. Now I am 35 years old. And yeah, that's your first question, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you were growing up, who was in your family? Can you tell me a little bit about your family members?
Oh, I spent my childhood partially with my grandma and partially with my parents, because they were too busy to make money to support the whole family financially. So my grandma helped them to raise me for a while, for a couple of years.
Can you share any memories you have about your grandmother? Anything special that you want to share about your experience with her?
Yeah, it's a long time ago. My grandmother was a very nice grandma. I think she's the best grandma in this world. And the most memorable thing was that during the night, like we went out to meet with other villagers, and they told me some, like silly story, and I was very interested in those story, and yeah, I remember those things. Yeah, many nights we spent together. I spent time listening to the story they told me. Yeah.
I love that. So you would sit outside to listen to these stories?
Yeah, I mean outside mean on the street. Yeah, but in the village. Yeah.
That's a nice memory. Can you tell me a little bit about the community that you grew up in? It's a small village. Was it agricultural? Can you describe it for us a little bit?
Oh yeah. Actually, it's a typical village in China. This village has like 100 households, about like 300 villager in it, and it's like a small community, and every village is like detached to other village, and a villager live together, and we have our farm in our like village area, and most villagers job of a farmer. Yeah, and some
So,
of them like raise livestock such as chicken, dogs, or pigs, including my family.
so were your parents farmers? Was that their job?
They were part-time farmer, and they had a full-time job in factories. Yeah, so considering that they, they were farmer part-time, so I need to help them to take care of our livestock.
Can you describe a little bit those responsibilities that you had when you were a child in terms of taking care of the animals and helping your parents out on the farm? Or
Yeah, and when I was a child, I didn't have the consciousness to be a like farm or to help them do anything. I just follow their command. I mean, when I came back from school, and the first thing I start to do is preparing dinner for our livestock, like pigs, and then started to do my homework, waiting for my parents to come home, and my mom who cook dinner for me, and sometime like I went to our farm, and I mean followed my parents, and helped them do some farmer work. Yeah.
you were and are an only child in your family. Was that typical at that time? Was that under the one child policy?
Yeah, I'm the only son of my parents, and my mom once told me she got pregnant, but I don't know how to like what's the right word to like abortion, right? Like yeah, she got abortion, and because she worried about the fine, or like not complying with the one child policy, and
Oh,
yeah,
how old were you? Do you know when that happened?
maybe teenager.
Did
Yeah.
your mom express her emotions about that experience?
um yeah, she then didn't tell me at that moment, and she told me many years ago, like I was my 20s, when the first time I left my hometown to university, and she told me about her experience. Yeah, she felt some, regretful about losing a child. Yeah.
That must have been a very painful, emotionally painful experience for her, I imagine.
Yeah, kind of painful, but she chose to do that, and actually in my hometown, the one child policy was not that constrained. I mean, strict, and so no one forced her, but they they were fine for
They were fine.
like yeah.
So were most of the children in your community when you were growing up? Were most of them the only child in the family?
Yeah, most family in our village had only one child.
You mentioned a little bit about growing up in an agricultural area and your grandmother, and I'm wondering if you have memories of particular foods when you were growing up, certain dishes that you ate often, or maybe special meals that you had at holidays or something like that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, all our food were from our farm and our livestock. So we ate a lot of wheat. We ate a lot porks and chicken and eggs.
And eggs.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
mhm.
What about rice? Was rice important in your diet?
No, we don't have rice in north of China.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's like imported food imported from south of China.
Interesting.
So yeah, I remember I didn't have any rice when I was child. It was not easy to get them.
You mentioned that the area was a poor area. Were you conscious of that when you were a child? That of maybe not having enough, or of it being a low income area, or were you not conscious of that until later in life?
Yeah, I think later in my life, when I was little, I didn't understand many things. Because I didn't have comparison.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't know like how my life is compared to others' life, or how like the economy in our area compared to the one in our other area. I didn't know. But when I went to university, I realized and the difference between my hometown and other places, especially the big city like Beijing, Tianjin. Uh,
Can you tell me about your education when you were growing up in your home village?
yeah, sure. I think education is a big topic in my life. Maybe it's the most important thing that uh, lead me to where I am today. My parents didn't get any formal education, or maybe a little bit, not like nothing. They told me they went to elementary school, then they started to work after they graduated from elementary school.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So how
So
old were they when they started working?
let me think about it. Maybe like 16 or 18.
And
Yeah,
then they were
not
working in a factory?
no. I mean working on farms
On the farm.
full
Okay.
time. Yeah, that kind of full time. Yeah. Yeah. Back then, many China citizens has that kind of life, right? They didn't have much opportunity and many opportunity to go to get formal education, and they had to make money for the whole family. Otherwise, they couldn't get enough food. And so, I mean, like considering their education level, they didn't have the concern to give me good education.
Right.
I remember when I was like in middle school. Yes, once they talked with me about my future, and they wanted me to work at a factory where they worked, and because I mean they wanted me to make some money for our family, and they wanted me to be independent. Additionally, they didn't realize how education can change a child's life. Yeah, but fortunately, sorry, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry. You wanted
Yeah,
to
and
finish?
yeah, fortunately, I didn't go to the factory and work there, and I got very good score in middle school, and then I went to high school, and then university. But at that time, many of my peers didn't have a chance to go to high school. I mean, like as an American, you might not be able to understand that, but with limited resources, educational resources, not many people can go to middle school, even high school. Maybe only 20 or 30% of my middle school peers had an opportunity to enter high school. Yeah.
So when you were going to elementary school, was that located right in your village?
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's pretty
Okay.
close. In my village,
Would you walk to school?
I walked.
And was your high school also located nearby?
No. Yeah, my elementary school was in my village, right? And when I went to middle school, I had to, ride a bike and to the middle school because it's outside my village. It's like 10 miles away from my village. While I went to high school, I started to live there because it's too far away from my home. Yeah.
So you lived in the same area where your high school was? You were not living at home when you went to high school?
It depends on the definition of the same area. It's like let me talk about the distance, like 20 miles or 30 miles
Was
away.
it like you lived in a student dormitory at that time in high school?
Yeah, it's like a dorm. Yeah.
So tell me, when you were in elementary school, middle school, high school, what were your favorite academic subjects?
Oh, that's a good question. I liked math, and I was good at math. Yeah. I found I liked and was good at math when I was in middle school. So in middle school, I oh my God, what's the name of the competition, like Olympiad, right? International Math Olympiad.
International Math Olympiad?
Yeah. That kind of thing. Yeah, a very fancy name or something. Yeah, I won a first prize, a national first prize or something. Yeah, in that
You won the
competition.
first prize in that competition?
Yeah, national.
Wow,
I
in the
mean,
national
China.
competition.
Uh-huh.
Wow, that is very impressive. Were you Now, your parents did not have, you mentioned they did not have access to higher education. They stopped at an early age, and you grew up in this rural area. So was the expectation for you that you would finish at high school and then return to your village and that would be the end of your education? Were you told that there were limitations on how much education you could receive?
Yeah, the turning point happened when I was middle school. But after I got into high school, and their thought changed, because as I said, only 20% of my middle school peers had an opportunity to go to high school. So when I got in high school, I mean, and I could tell they started to think about my academic future because they saw talent on my young self, and but they didn't expect I can go to a good university in my country. But they do hope I can have a bright future. I mean, brighter future than they had. So
if I
yeah.
remember correctly, when you were in my class, you mentioned something about being told that people from your community didn't have the genetic capability to go to university. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, I might be the first university student for my village, and it's a big thing in this small village, because most of villagers and their next generation didn't have a chance to go to university or high school, and why? I think limited resources is one of the reason, and the second important reason was they didn't believe they were qualified to be a university student, or their next generation was qualified to be a university student. So I think
who communicated that message that to people in your community, like, you're not going to go further in your education, you don't have the capacity for it? Was it the teachers who were saying that, or who was saying that? How did that mentality come to be?
Sometimes there was not an announcement or agreement between everyone. There was just like a common sense among a group of people. People didn't talk about, oh, our next generation would not go to university. People just didn't talk about anything about the university. They didn't talk about this possibility, meaning they didn't have expectation. They didn't believe it would happen, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me that you took such a different path, and I'm curious about how you ended up becoming aware of other opportunities and how you were able to create such a different life for yourself compared to other young people from your community. What made the big difference?
Oh, it's hard to answer. To be honest, I would like to share a very inspiring story. Like when I was little, I was, aware of that, but it's not true. So before I went to university, I was not aware strongly of my future, or I didn't intentionally study hard to change my life. No, I just I just did what I wanted to do. As I said, I loved science, I loved math, and I was good at it. And to be honest, I enjoy the the praise from teachers or admire from my classmates. That's what I truly cared about. So I studied hard, and I worked hard. I got nice score. Then I got into the university. But after I went to university, I started to think about it. I started to, I realized how lucky I was. Even I didn't study hard intentionally to change my life. I didn't have the idea of changing my life using the power of education. I didn't before I went to university. But when I was in university, I told myself I was so lucky.
Your parents must have been very, very proud of you too, as you continue to do really well at each level and passing exams and winning this mathematics competition. Did they express that to you, being proud of you?
Yeah, they were very proud of me, especially I'm the first university student from my village, and yeah, they enjoy talking about my education accomplishment back then, like kind of showed off to your other villagers. Yeah.
So when did you, let's say that when you went to university, you probably started understanding that there was this big world out there that was very different from the community that you grew up in. And how did that change your goals or your direction or your motivation once you started understanding that, you know, there are these big cities and there are places to travel? Can you talk a little bit about your world opening up when you first went to university?
Yeah, sure. I think the determining factor was I realized how different people's life can be, and I realized how lucky I was because I studied hard and got into university. So so I believe I was, when I was in university, I believe I was a late bird. I'm not sure this phrase is correct. I mean, early bird and late bird. Late bird, I mean, like I studied to have these resources or awareness were late. So I had to work harder than my university peer to get outstanding, to make this story
Sometimes we call it a late
keep
bloomer.
going.
Is that the
Yeah.
expression you're looking for? A late bloomer?
Sorry, late what?
Bloomer? It's like
Late.
blossoming.
Early bird, like early bird ticket, like when you were young or you study early, or like when you were young, you had much resources, you had more resources than your peers. I mean, like that's early bird for me. I'm a late bird. I
Late
didn't
bird.
have, yeah, I didn't have much resources. I didn't have, no one told me like what I should do, right? You should
Right.
go to university. No one told me. I just like, oh, kind of confusing. Sure.
Right.
Finally went to the high school and the university. Then I realized back then I was already 20, yeah, maybe 20 years old. And I started to have the awareness that I was supposed to have when I was 15 or 14 years old.
So was there a mentor or a university professor or someone who started to guide you, who started to help you at some point about directing your career or your education?
Unfortunately, there were not.
So tell me a little bit about your experience in university and your goals. I know you started off working in one field and you ended up having a bit of a career switch. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, sure. So as I said, I thought I was very good at math, right? And I won prize or something. But after I got into university, I found there were so many talented people. There are more talent than I was, and the more I realized that, the less confidence I had. So I had a hard time during the first year in the university, and then I told myself like it was not easy to get here where I was now, right? I mean back then. So don't waste this opportunity, and then I started to challenge myself. Back then, I couldn't like speak Mandarin very well, and so a good way to help me solve this problem was join student club. Then I started to join many student club, interact with my peers who were from big city, right? Instead of small village, and I try to be outstanding among them, and
as a language teacher, I'm very interested in what you just said about not being able to speak Mandarin very well. When you were growing up, did you speak a different dialect of Mandarin Chinese or a different language? Did you have an accent that was perceived by others at the university as being more rural?
Yeah, there are thousands of dialects in China, and in my village, people speak a very unique dialect, which is very different from Mandarin. So I didn't speak much Mandarin in my daily life before going to university. So I was not used to it. Yeah.
Is there discrimination against people who have what's considered non-standard Chinese, or because of the way you spoke, did people discriminate against you once you got to larger cities? Like, did people look down on you?
I know, I know, yeah,
different
I understand your question. Yeah, I just try to recall what happened. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think my accent was laughed at. I don't think so, but my origin might make some of my peers look down at me, because I didn't understand many things they were talking about. They were talking about you know, kind of art, music, you know, like fancy hobbies. I didn't have any, right? I didn't even try McDonald's or KFC back then, because there were no KFC or McDonald's, that kind of fancy restaurant in my hometown.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So did you, once you started seeing all these opportunities, it made you want to get a high-paying job, if I remember correctly? Like, that was something that you were very interested in doing and working in business?
Yeah, I think the main reason why I chose my first job, because it was fancy and can, you know, give much high salary. Yeah.
So tell me about your first job.
Yeah, my first job was working for an American company. It's a multinational company. That's a leadership program, and it's not guaranteed, but you might be a manager after that program. So why I chose that job as my first one, because it was fancy, multinational, right? From a village to a international company. Yeah, that's a good story. That is inspiring. And then the pay was good. Yeah, was better than most job that my peer could get.
And did that enable you to send money back to your parents and help them?
Yeah, they didn't need that. They didn't need me to send back money, but I intentionally send back to say thanks to them. And doing that made me feel very proud of myself. Yeah.
Something I remember you mentioning when you were in my class was how you had this idea about status, about buying fancy things, a fancy apartment, status symbols. And then you did that, but you still felt like there was something missing in your life. Can you talk a little bit about that? About how what sort of things you bought, these status symbols, and your feelings and emotions about them?
Yeah. The first stage is about money. I didn't have money. My family didn't have money. I'm from a poor family, so much I like them, the more I wanted to get them. I worked very hard to make money. Then I bought a house. I bought an apartment, not a house. See, in China, we usually say house. I bought an apartment and a fancy car. Couple of years later, after I got my first job, and I felt very proud of myself, and I had the ability to send back money to my parents. I could buy what they need and what I need for us, and they could show off again with other villager, right? That's what our son bought for us. I enjoy doing that, to be honest. Yeah, I felt very satisfied. But after I got all those what I wanted, what I thought were important, it's hard to describe that kind of feeling. I felt unsatisfied. It's like I did that all for to make others look up to me, to make myself outstanding, much more outstanding among my peers in village. Then I could brag, or it suddenly became very meaningless to me. Yeah, so that's what I wanted. I asked myself, I didn't feel happy anymore. So I spent many years thinking about what really I really want, what I really need, and what I really want to do to myself and people or community around me. So I started to get deeper into the meaning of my life and into the motivation of my life. Yeah.
So the success that you had in terms of being able to buy a fancy apartment and a fancy car, you realized that those things were not buying you happiness, and being richer than the classmates that you grew up with, that wasn't bringing you happiness either. So what did you do to try to figure out your next steps? You have all this stuff, you have status, you have a very comfortable life, your parents can brag about you, but you felt empty, or you felt like, I think you said that this was meaningless. So
yeah,
what changed?
Yeah. I feel empty. I feel empty. I those things did bring me happiness, but it was very short. Yeah, so I wanted to I wanted this like a continuous happiness or a sense of accomplishment, and I started to try many different things, like volunteer or try to care more about people around me. You know, like when you focus on making money, you you might become to be a very very mean person, right?
Right.
Yeah. So uh so I started to be nicer, to be friendly, to be kind to people around me. I started to care about the community where I lived in. Yeah, that's what I did to figure out what really made me happy continuously.
So did you try to reach out to the community where you grew up to help people there?
You mean my village?
Yeah.
Uh,
Or were you focused more on, you mentioned volunteer work. Was that in Beijing where you started doing volunteer work?
yeah, it was easier to volunteer in big city in Beijing, right?
Can you tell me about like the type of volunteer work that you did?
Oh yeah, sure. Um, so once I went to I'm not sure it's a kindergarten or yeah, it's kind of like kindergarten. But the children in that kindergarten were who didn't have parents on their side because their parents went to jail and they were in jail service
Interesting.
back then. So that's why those children were sent to special kindergarten. And I volunteered there for like 2 years. I went there regularly with some of my friends and coworkers to talk with them and play with them and to share our stories with them. Yeah. So I think what we did might change the life. I don't know, but I hope so. I hope our kindness, our time spent with them could make them feel better about this world and could encourage them to escape from the limitation of their life.
So
Right.
did you feel a shift in yourself? Did you start to feel happier once you started volunteering and helping out, um, helping these children? Did you start to feel more meaning in your life?
Yeah, at least I got more and long continuous happiness than buying an apartment and a fancy car. Yeah. So I think that's what a right path giving out can give me more happiness and a sense of accomplishment than getting something.
Do you hope to someday be able to help children in the community where you grew up, in that village? Do you have some ideas about how you might be able to maybe inspire children or young people in your village to seek a higher education?
I hope I will have that opportunity, but it's not easy.
Right.
Yeah, what we can do sometimes it depend on the environment, but I really hope I can contribute to the place where I grew up.
I'm very curious about how you ended up living in the United States and what your ideas were about
Mhm.
American life and American culture before you came here. Did you have ideas about the United States from movies or television? And
Yeah.
sometimes students tell me that they have this vision of the American dream based on Hollywood. And then they come here and they realize, oh, it's really not, it's really not the reality. Did that
Mhm.
happen to you?
Yeah, it's similar story. I did have expectation, but kind of negative. When I decided to immigrate to the United States, was when I was like on my 30s, right? So I heard a lot of stories. I watched a lot of movies, news, on social media in China, and I read book. Uh, I yeah, I didn't expect American dream about like a very uh, positive side. Most what I saw was the negative side of United States, like like the racism, the gun issue, drug issue, that kind of thing. Yeah.
You had an idea about America that was related to violence and racism. Did you form those ideas based on media that you consumed in China? Was the news coverage about America focused on problems related to race and gun violence?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so from social media in China, and not only social media in China, but also some social media from the United States. Because
Right.
I even like Twitter, Facebook was blocked in China, but I had VPN. Uh, VPN. I don't know how to explain it. It's like yeah,
Secure server.
yeah, kind of that. So I could browse on Twitter using VPN.
Interesting.
So yeah, I read a little bit about that, and that's one source. And the other one is was American movies.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I found America. It's good part of American culture is Americans never try to cover the issues in the United States, right? They perform it surely in movie about racism, about some conflicts in the society, about gun issue. Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah.
So were you a little bit nervous about moving to the United States? Did you feel worried about encountering racism or violence here?
I was nervous. I was nervous. I was much worried about my personal security. Yeah, the gun issue. I was kind of scared after before I moved here. Yeah.
And then once you moved here,
Now I feel much better.
can you
I
tell me
feel,
more about that?
yeah. Now I feel much better. I live in Rockville in Maryland, and so I believe this area is safe. I didn't I experienced living in other areas like Baltimore. I heard that area is kind of the criminal rate is kind of high. I don't know, but based on my current experience, uh, I I don't feel the danger that I expected before I moved here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you encountered racism against Chinese people since you've been living here?
In my real life,
Yeah,
not yet, not yet. I hope I won't. Yeah,
I hope you
but
won't.
yeah, but if I face, I think, I don't know how to deal with it, but I think I will be fine. Yeah, I think I'm much stronger than I think I am. Yeah.
What would you like Americans to understand about being a Chinese person in the United States?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. Um, I haven't talked with many Americans about their ideas on what Chinese people look like or about their stereotype, right? So I don't have any assumption, but I can share my real life experience with you. Once I had lunch with one of my friend's parents, and they asked me a very interesting question. They asked that are there still many arranged marriage in China? So what the answer is no, right? But what they talk about was like 20 years ago or 30 years ago in China. And let me assume that their thoughts, like most Americans thought about Chinese people or Chinese culture. So I think Chinese people know better about the United States than American people know about China, about Chinese people.
That's
Yeah,
really interesting.
yeah.
So, do you try to communicate to others a little bit about your experience or about your background? Do you have opportunities to share your culture with Americans here? Are there, I'm trying to think, maybe opportunities to
Mhm.
talk with Americans about what it means to be Chinese?
Mm, I don't do that proactively.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, but if people ask me, I would like to share.
And what do you share when people ask you this? When you have the opportunity to share something about being a Chinese immigrant in the United States, what aspects of your culture do you like to share?
Mm, I would like to share the change of my thought uh, about the United States, about my home country, China, about my about the blind spot I had before I moved here.
I think that term blind spot is very interesting. Can you say
Mhm.
more about that? What were your blind
Yeah,
spots?
my blind spot. Um, Blind spot means I didn't realize many things before I moved here. For example, so in your class, right? I really enjoy it, and when talk we talk about discrimination, and we wrote essay, right?
Right.
And during the process, I didn't only think about the topic we talk about, but also think about discrimination in my home country. So before I moved here, my idea was that the United States is the most racist country. There are like much discrimination in that society, but in China it's fine, it's good, right? But when I worked on that essay, I realized actually there is different type of discrimination in China. It's not based on race. It's based on the social classes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's based on where you are from. You are from city, you are from village, you are from north of China or south of China, right? You are from like a inner city or like coastal city, or like what job, what's your like you are doing, right? You are a CEO, or you are a nurse or a teacher or something. Your occupation, your income can decide on your social classes, and can decide how much social resources you have. And yeah, and based on those tags, right, your occupation or social resources you have, people started to judge on your value, to judge on your which social class you belong to. And so that's how the discrimination in my home country happened.
I think what you said is very interesting, because sometimes we have to step outside of our home country and our home culture in order to see it clearly. I felt that way when I was in my 20s living in France. It was there that I began to have a better understanding about American culture. It's like you have to kind of leave for a while in order to get a clearer picture. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience at Montgomery College, how it helped you in terms of language or in terms of understanding American culture?
Yeah, firstly, let me talk about why I went to MC. So I went to MC in the second or third month after I moved here. Yeah, back then I was very nervous about my new life here. I'm going to tell you a very funny story. So after I moved to Rockville, and I went to Five Guys, the chain restaurant, right, to order a burger. I was scared of speaking English or responding to people's questions. So when I was in Five Guys to order, that guy in Five Guys, working in Five Guys, asked me, what toppings would you like? Toppings. I didn't understand what toppings means. So I saw toppings mean top means very like high or something. I saw topping, you need to pay extra money.
Oh, that's fascinating.
to get topping.
Right,
Toppings sound very expensive. Now, what topping is, I don't know. So I said, no thanks. And that guy asked me, are you sure? I said, sure. Then I ended up having a burger with only 2 slices of bread and some steaks and a little bit cheese without any vegetables or sauce.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I wanted to make some change, and so I went to Montgomery College to improve my English, and yeah, that's just why I went there, and I really enjoyed your class, which is ELAP 990. So the most enjoyable part for me was writing essay. For me, it was not only practicing my writing skill, English writing skill, but also like self-reflection, because the topic you chose were very meaningful, right? We talk about the social justice, like the stereotype, the racism, that kind of meaningful topics. Yeah, so I enjoy doing them, and so after that course, I felt much more confident about my English, and I understand more about the society. I mean, in the United States. Yeah, so that 4 months experience was very important to me, to my new life here. Yeah.
Well, I remember that I really enjoyed reading your essays. You had a lot of interesting ideas to share, so that makes me happy to hear that. I think if I remember correctly, you also used some other resources at Montgomery College, like
Mhm.
Speech coaching, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Did that
Professor
help
Mac.
you? Professor Mac, yeah, and speech.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, yeah, and yes, thanks. Yeah, I mean, like, thanks for your recommendation, right? And why that's what's topic is that? Like a video essay or something? Yeah, video essay. Yeah, I reached out to Professor Mac and got help from her, and I learned a lot from her about my like speech skills in English setting, and yeah, and I kept practicing after the video essay, and one of the most skill she taught me was reading is the best way to proofread your essay. Yeah, so I am still using this skill learned from her.
To read it out loud.
Yeah, I read aloud. Yeah.
And that helps you with proofreading and editing and locating errors.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, pretty helpful.
Were there any other resources you used when you were at the college, like the writing center or the library?
I got a lot of help from writing center. Yeah, and people there were very professional and very helpful, because I decided to apply for a graduate program in the US. So, they always require a lot of application essays, and I needed help with that, and so I made a lot of appointment. I think I made over 40 or at least 30 appointments.
Oh,
Yeah, with people in writing center. Yeah, mostly in Rockville campus, but once I drove to the Germantown campus to get help with my essays. Yeah.
And you were accepted into a graduate program, right?
Yeah, but I'm still waiting for like some for some
You'll have to
program
keep
to final decision. Yeah.
keep us posted on what happens.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
What advice would you give to a new student at Montgomery College?
Yeah. After I went to MSc, I found most of my classmates were much younger than me. I don't know. I mean, like I try to imagine what good advices I can give to the listener of this video. I want to say this. So, to the listener who are on their 20s or younger than 20s, so I want to say I understand how you feel now. And I understand that if I can travel back to my 20s, I mean the same age as you, someone showed up and they gave me a lot golden advices, I might think that's bullshit, right? Don't tell me about that. I have my own life story. I have my ideas. So I'm not going to give you advice. I just want to tell you, everyone has only one time to spend their 20s, only one time spend their 30s. I am going to be on my 40s very soon, maybe a couple of years later, and I have a lot of regrets. I hope you can make most of your time and do what would you like to do. At the same time, try to get feedback from people around you, from people who care about you. That can make me make most of your time. And the final goal is to experience a high quality of your life, experience high quality of your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, right? Everyone has almost same amount of time in this world, and our ending will be the same, will be death, but it's kind of sad. So the meaningful part is experiencing. Yeah, so that's what I would like to say.
The meaningful part is experiencing things. Is that what you said?
Yeah, experiencing.
What kind of experiences?
Experiencing means what you get, what your possession. You will lose them, but you won't lose your memory. You won't lose your contribution to this society. You won't lose the sense of accomplishment when you help people. So you won't lose that, but you might lose your money. You might lose your apartment, your car, right? Yeah.
That's really interesting and insightful. You mentioned that you had some regrets. What regrets do you have?
My regrets, I wasted time. I wasted time when I was young. As we talked about my accomplishment that I achieved, right? And I stayed in my comfort zone for many years. after I made money. I sat in my apartment, nice apartment. I drove my fancy car. I just wasted time and staying in my comfort zone for a long time. I stopped growing. I stopped experiencing this world. That's my biggest regret about the past. Yeah.
It sounds like you came to the realization that buying things didn't make you happy, but being with people and making a difference in your community was what really brought you happiness. Is that a correct way to say?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Some possession can be taken away, like your money or your fancy cars, like some fancy clothes, but something couldn't be taken away. They are the meaningful thing you do to yourself and for your community. I mean, for yourself, the number one thing you can do is getting education to open your eyes, to make you more awareness of your inner self and the outside world.
A lot of students I've interviewed for this project have talked about the idea of home.
Mm-hmm.
What is home? Is home where you grew up? Is home where you live now? Do you feel like you're at home now in Rockville?
Oh yeah, I need to take time to think about it. Rockville. So in my opinion, home represents the sense of security. So yeah, I think Rockville is my home, and the village is my home, and Beijing, where I lived for many years, is my home too, because I can feel the sense of security. Yeah.
You have 3 homes.
Yeah, I have 3 homes, and I have more homes. So yeah, I feel now I am more tolerant to location, because I can find a sense of security. Maybe the security I give it to myself, or my family, my wife, or my friends, my parents give me that. I don't know the truth. Only thing I know is I am more tolerant to the location. Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
It's unknown. If you talk about the location, for me it's not big deal. But in 5 years, I hope I will be doing a very meaningful job, not for money, but for the contribution I can do to people around me. And in 5 years, I will feel I'm tired of doing that job. I feel meaningful every day about what I will be doing. Yeah, that's my vision.
I think you said a couple of many interesting things during this interview, but one idea I want to come back to is this idea of time,
Mhm.
the limits of time, right?
Mm.
And there, you mentioned that you felt like you were an older student in the class, which I think is interesting because you took a class, if I remember correctly, in the afternoon, but my students in the evening classes are often older than you. So if you had been in
Oh,
that class in the evening, you might have felt young, or you might have felt like you were with your peers.
mhm.
So what I'm thinking about is this idea of how it takes time in life to figure out what we want, to figure out what makes us happy. It takes time to reach our goals. And
Yeah.
we can't really have insight into what we truly want until we've tried different things. Maybe we've tried different types of jobs or living in different places. And so it's very hard to know sometimes, am I on the right path? Am I going in the right direction? So this is a very long way of asking you,
Mhm.
when things felt challenging, when you felt like you had obstacles, or you felt like, oh my gosh, I'm this age, I haven't reached the goal that I want to yet, I want to go in a different direction. What helped you in those challenging times? Like, what gave you hope or strength to find the energy to go back to graduate school, or to try living in a new place, or to try to reach your next career goal? What helped you? What motivated you?
What motivated me? Or how I made those decisions.
Either way or both. I'm just curious
Yeah.
what sustains people when they're faced with really tough challenges.
Mhm.
For you, what sustained you or gave you energy to keep going?
Mm, yeah. I think the first thing is what I talked about. I want to experience more about this world, and during this process, I can explore my inner self. That's very important to me. I I don't want a result. I just want a process, right? Oh, that's the number one reason. And the number two reason is that uh, when I face very tough decision that I need to make, uh, I I think about what I own now, and I own health, I own family, right? And so they are the most important thing to me. I won't lose them. So for the degree, for salary, why don't I just go to try my best and pursue them as a like NBA game, right? Uh, yeah, so that was how I made the decision and motivated myself.
Some of the students that I have interviewed have talked about how religious faith or spirituality, different spiritual practices, maybe prayer or meditation or belonging to a spiritual community, um, was beneficial to them and meaningful to them. Has that
Mhm.
been your experience?
My experience is different. I don't have a religion, so I have to help myself, not ask for help from God. Uh, um, but kind of similar. Uh, I I sometimes I imagine I stay in the sky and look down at myself or look down at this world. So uh, that make me realize it's not big deal. This challenge, it's not big deal, right? Look at the big picture of your life. So everything will be fine. Just do it. Just enjoy your experience in this world.
When you were a student in my class, you shared some photographs with me of you in the outdoors. I think you were in the mountains. Is being in nature important to you?
Yeah, it's very important to me. Especially I spent too much time in one of the biggest city in this world, Beijing. So when people are in big cities or are struggling with their work, it's easy for them to forget what they want. That's why being in wild is important to me, because I can get rid of those worries about my work, about my like professional lives. I can empty myself and get refreshed and think over about what are important to me. Yeah, so I highly recommend listeners to go to wild regularly, maybe walking in park or hiking or flying to a strange place to get refresh yourself. That's very important.
Are there any natural places here in Maryland that are important to you where you go to be in nature? Like, are there any gardens or parks where you like to walk or go hiking?
Yeah, last month I went to Great Falls.
Great Falls, yeah.
Yeah, to Great Falls. That's very beautiful, and I also help plan or visiting maybe 10 top 10 national parks in the US. Yeah, like Yellowstone, Yosemite, that kind of places.
Have you already been to some of those parks, or you hope to go there in the future?
I have planned to go there. Yeah, I haven't gone to any of them. But, the national parks with big names.
Well, Shenandoah is not that far from here, so you should maybe go there if you get an opportunity. You can drive there.
Yeah, maybe no, but not in rush. Now I have another like a priority. Yeah.
How do you feel about telling your story today? What emotions are you feeling as you describe memories from your childhood and as you think about changes that you've experienced in your life? What are you feeling right now?
I enjoy this interview. That let me think about my story might make a positive impact on some listeners, and this thought makes me feel very, very happy. Yeah, and I also feel good about sharing my stories, my past, my motivations. Yeah, I think this kind of giving out feeling makes me feel very good.
Is there anything else that you would like to add today to the conversation?
Yeah, I think that that's it.
Well, I always enjoyed reading your essays when you were in my class, and I enjoyed your contributions to class conversation. So I'm really happy we had the chance today to continue talking. It's been very interesting, very insightful. Thank you so much for your time, Clark.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for this opportunity. Yeah.